And a good day to you. Take two with Jerry and Debbie, rolling now on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. And I'll tell you, folks, one thing that far too many people are talking about nowadays and being forced to do so is teen depression, teen suicide. I have some very good friends in San Diego whose son jumped off a bridge to his death about a year ago. There have been 3 or 4 suicides, a couple of them teens, in my parish recently. So this topic that we're going to be addressing today, with your takes, we want your participation at 1-800-585-9396. Debbie, this topic that we're addressing today it's a growing phenomenon, and we want to do whatever we can to help families and teens and our listeners avoid the pain and the tragedy that comes along with this.
And I think the more we talk about it, the more we share different stories, the more we can learn and grow so that we can be a support to our teens and help them thrive through this world and really cope with certain things that they are encountering. So this is an important topic. Please, dear listeners, take note and really pay attention to the entire broadcast. We really feel this will be life-changing and it'll be eye-opening for all of us, especially if we have teens still living in the home or even our grandchildren. This could really help us. The number to dial is 1-800-585-9396 if you want to weigh in on this discussion. 1-800-585-9396.
Maybe you are a teen and you are experiencing even just a lack of peace or settledness in your life, if there is such a word. Maybe you're just in outright depression. Maybe you've had suicidal thoughts before. Maybe you've attempted it. Parents, moms, dads, if you see any kinds of signs in your kids, and you don't always see that, as we're going to find out from our guest today, but share your take on this, or you've got an opportunity to call in and talk with a young man. Luke Maxwell is joining us today. I've known Luke and his family for at least 15 years. I worked with his father, Scott, at Catholic Answers, his mother, Carol, just fantastic people. Love the Catholic faith, passionate, dynamic, creative, always sort of on the go, sharing the faith and doing things for the Lord. And they have a large family, I think 7 kids, and it was about 3 years ago in December that Luke, who I believe, Luke can correct me if I'm wrong, was I think, well, Luke, how old were you when you made the suicide attempt? 16?
I was 16.
Yeah, he took the family van, hopped in it, got it up to 60 miles an hour, excuse me, and drove head-on into another vehicle in an attempt to end his life. And miraculously, Luke and the other driver walked away virtually unscathed. They ended up meeting sometime later. They had become friends. Now they are somewhat partners in the message of teen suicide, providing hope for teens and young people. And Luke has a website and a ministry. And folks, this is a story that is absolutely unbelievable. It's something you would not be able to believe if it weren't true. So Luke Maxwell, welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be on here with you. It's always great to share my message and to reach more people and just to do whatever I can with what God wants me to do.
Luke, do us a favor if you can. Take us back to maybe even a couple years before you really were at that critical point where you wanted to end your life, and kind of maybe set the stage for us. What were you going through? Kind of give us the background so we as parents and grandparents can kind of learn and really understand what our teens are dealing with.
Right, of course. I mean, it's something I always get parents talking to me like, oh no, I didn't realize this was serious. Maybe it's my kid. And of course, as parents, you're worried about your kid. You want them to live happy, complete lives. And so growing up, I was a really happy, semi-normal kid, if normal even exists. But it was around the age of 12 when I slowly began feeling the symptoms of what I now know as clinical depression. So from 12 years old, I started feeling sad, lonely, depressed, in the more than those use of the word that most people think of as just feeling tired, sad, kind of down. And then as the years progressed, it got worse. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus. Eventually I just couldn't care about anything, about my faith, my family. I thought I was completely alone and abandoned and that nobody cared. and that was the life I lived in for 4 years.
Well, Luke, I had a chance to get caught up with your father here a few weeks ago. We hadn't seen each other for a few years, and he shared that he and Carol, your mom, had no clue whatsoever that this was going on. And I want to talk about this for a minute because there obviously is a stigma to this. Anyone who is going through depression, anyone who has suicidal thoughts, it's really something you don't want other people to know. And it sounds like you did a masterful job of hiding this from your family.
I did. And that was the thing, and that's one of the most dangerous things about especially teen depression, but also depression and mental illness in general, is that most people hide it completely and very well, especially teens, because we don't want to be labeled as different, weird, out of the ordinary. Like me, I just wanted to live a happy, normal life, free of pain, free of all of this struggles that I had. And I thought, great, I'm the only one to deal with this. Nobody would understand, so why share this with them? And I'm not the best at sharing my feelings either. I really am. I'm not. I mean, you could ask my parents. So it didn't come naturally to me, and after a while, I thought they just didn't care. So most of my energy was spent keeping everything secret. Everything I was feeling, everything I was doing, I worked night and day to make sure nobody knew.
So, Luke, I want to ask you some more questions because this is interesting how you spent 4 years really struggling with this until it got to a real critical point where you had made a decision. And I want to just kind of get back to that and kind of get into the mindset of what you were, what was going on a day-to-day basis. You said you were using the energy to kind of keep this a secret, but I wanted to kind of explore that a little more. But dear listeners, you please call in if you want to talk to Luke, you want to ask Luke a question, you want to share your own experience at 1-800-585-9396. And real quickly, I just want to mention real quickly, yesterday's show, Lorraine called in, and I have resources for her talking about her situation. Please, Lorraine, if you hear this, if you're listening, email me at take2, the number 2, at EWTN.com. Because I just want to make sure that you get those resources that you may need for your family. But Luke, going back to your situation really, really quickly about this. So the 4 years, you said you kept it secret. Did you ever at all share this with peers, with any of your friends, anybody around you, any of your support system? Did it ever kind of a little bit leak out so people could get like a hint that you were struggling with this?
If everyone around me was well versed in that, knew all the symptoms of depression, knew what it was, and that's just another medical illness, and was able to identify that, I would say yes, maybe they would see some small signs there. And I think as parents and friends especially, that's what we need to look for. Because most of the times we don't see big signs. Sometimes we will. Sometimes people will post on social media or send out a text saying that they feel like dying, that they just can't go on. That's a pretty big sign that we should take seriously. Mm-hmm. But I think for me, if everybody around me was very, very well versed in depression and its symptoms, yes, they could have seen some small signs. And maybe someone could have got me to open up, so they talked to me about it. But as far as I can see looking back, I didn't give out any big signs.
Wow.
Luke Maxwell is with us on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. We are talking about teen depression and suicide. We're not only taking a kind of a different, unique look at it, we are taking a look at it through the eyes of a young man who attempted suicide 3 years ago in December, 60-mile-an-hour head-on, drove the family van into another vehicle. Both not only survived, but came away pretty much uninjured, thanks be to God. They have actually even, in some ways, teamed up to get the word out that there is hope, there is healing for especially young people who are going through this. So if you are a parent and you just see some things in your kids, you just go, they weren't like this a year ago or a couple of years ago. Maybe they've gotten quiet, or maybe they want to just spend all their time alone or all their time sleeping or no energy or initiative. It may not be depression, doesn't have to be, but Perhaps you can call in and just run that by Luke today and get his thoughts on it. Debbie and I always say we're not counselors, we're not therapists. Luke isn't either, so we're not in that business, but we're in the business of sharing life experiences. I've been through a pretty nasty depression myself. We've all had our ups and downs. So what we want to do is just impart hope here. And if you're a young person who is experiencing something going on in your life you really can't make sense of, but you feel like you're changed. You're not that happy-go-lucky kid that you were some time back in your past. Call in and talk to Luke at 1-800-585-9396. And Luke, before we go any further, we got a break coming up in a couple minutes, but you've created a whole ministry around what has happened to you, and I think it's fantastic. Please give our listeners your website, how they can contact you. I know you keep a list of names and a prayer book. You pray for people regularly. You got a great website, a lot of resources on there.
Yes, so I started a website in light of all this tragedy to give hope, to shine a light, to turn something bad into something good. So my website is youcan'tbeerased.com, the letter U can't, the letter B erased.com. And on there I have a symptom list, one for teen and one for parents to look at their teen. I also have a letter teens can print out and give to their parents, because I know talking about how you're feeling can be really hard, especially for a lot of us guys. Although, for a lot of girls as well. And then I have other resources on there. I have a bunch of links to different organizations, to different studies, especially the study the CDC did, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. That's where I get most of my statistics. That's where it tells us that more than 1 in 4, high school-age students are suffering from clinical depression, and 1 in 12 attempt suicide. So I have different things on there. I blog regularly, and of course I also have social media so everyone can keep up with me and what I'm doing to learn different things. And in general, just to form a community around this of people who are unashamed to talk about mental illness, who want to make their community silence-free, and so that all of us aren't afraid to talk about this if something happens.
So, Luke, in addition to your ministry that you're doing now, do you also go around and travel and give talks in different areas, or is it just in your hometown?
Oh no, I've been blessed to travel a good bit. I'm based in San Diego, California, and so I've traveled to Kansas, Ohio, a lot local. I do speak a lot local, which is nice because but I will travel anywhere someone wants me to give a talk. I will travel there. Because I want to share my message. That's my goal, is to share my message to, as many people as I possibly can, especially during this last year, because I'm 19. This is my last year as a teenager. Mm-hmm. So I really want to reach as many high schools, youth groups, parent groups as possible while I still am technically a teenager.
Right. Yeah, that's the best way, because you can relate so closely to the teens, and so that's perfect. Well, Luke, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we've already got the calls just being screened right now and ready to go, and so if you'll stay with us to take questions. And dear listeners, we're talking about teen suicide, teen depression today. We have our guest, Luke Maxwell, with us. Please stay with us. We're going to take a quick break and come right back to your calls on Take 2 with Jerry and Debbie. We'll be right back.
What's stopping you from becoming a Catholic?
Why can't women become priests?
I don't understand why I have to earn salvation.
How is it possible that God created everything?
Why do I need to confess my sins to a priest?
Why is the Catholic Church so unwilling to The Catholic Church is too rich.
Catholics worship Mary and are committed.
As far as I'm concerned, all religions are equal.
You are called to communion with Dr. David Anders. Today, 2 p.m. Eastern, on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
Whether you're at home, at work, in the car, you can follow what he teaches 24 hours each day. We're EWTN Radio.
And just to let you know, I'm a returning Catholic because of EWTN. Bless you guys and keep it up.
And you're invited to visit our website too. Just log on to www.ewtn.com. That's www.ewtn.com.
Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on EWTN Radio. Our guest is Luke Maxwell. His ministry is You Can't Be Erased. The letter U, can't, and then the letter B, erased. You can't be erased.com. And you're going to find a lot of resources on there. And Luke, before we get to the calls, I believe you also have a presentation, or you give talks to parents who have lost teens to suicide. Is that correct?
Yes, so far I haven't give talk to an audience specifically of those parents, but yes, I've had many parents in my audiences who have lost their son or daughter to suicide.
Okay, so I mentioned that simply because if there is anyone among our dear listeners, we love you, and if you're grieving the loss of a son or daughter, obviously we couldn't spend a lot of time with you on the air, but maybe you just want a word or a few words of hope from Luke Maxwell, again, who miraculously survived a suicide attempt a little over 3 years ago. 800-585-9396 is the number. Okay, we do have a lot of calls, so we are going to go to your phone calls and your takes and questions right now. Kathy is in Yeardley. Is it Yeardley, Pennsylvania, Kathy?
Yes.
Well, welcome, listening on Sirius XM 130. You're on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie and Luke Maxwell. Go ahead, Kathy.
Hi, Jerry and Debbie. Hi, Luke. I just want to praise Luke for his wonderful ministry and the outreach that he's doing for both teens and parents alike. I'm a psychiatric mental health nurse. I also have the honor of teaching nursing students about psych mental health nursing, and some of the points that have been raised I think are wonderful. I think the stigma involved with mental health is still a key factor. But one of my concerns, and I would ask all of you to comment on this if you would, is I've seen over the many years that I've been involved in psych mental health nursing, in addition to the stigma of mental health, I think the breakdown of the family unit is really impacting our youth today as well. And I wonder if Luke or you could comment on that in your own experiences as far as if you think that might have anything to do with this very important issue. If you don't mind,
Luke,
I'll hang up and I'll just listen to your comments.
Sure. Thanks, Kathy, so much. Luke, we'll let you go first, and I know that in your situation that wasn't necessarily a factor, right?
Right. But again, there's two main types of depression, is that you either get this genetically, like I did, or it can be situational. And yes, I would definitely say when the family isn't together, isn't there supporting each other, then that can lead to a lot of situational depression. Because, like I said, when you're depressed, you feel alone, like no one wants to help you, that no one cares. And when the family is not around you, your primary support system isn't there, then yes, it can definitely lead to feelings of loneliness, sadness, and then of course that can turn into a situational depression. So yes, I definitely agree with that. That the family is, I would say, one of the most important tools to preventing a mental illness and also overcoming it.
Well, and I just want to say, Kathy, I know you're listening. Thank you for the work that you do as a nurse. I mean, you do such great work. I always said the nurses that are in the medical profession, wow, they're just an amazing group of people that have generous and wonderful, caring hearts. So thank you, Kathy, for your work that you do as being a nurse. But Luke, let me ask you this question, because it kind of tailing on what Kathy was saying about the family. I mean, you go back to when you were saying about subtle clues or hints, or maybe just different signs that this depression was happening, whether it's clinical or whether it's situational. I mean, as a parent, I have two grown sons, but as a parent, how do you know when to really react to it? I mean, a lot of junior high kids, I've been a youth minister for many, many years, and a lot of junior high kids, it's just them, hormonally changing, they're kind of, or their emotions are up and down. How do you know when to really, take it, to a serious level? I mean, is there a certain type of demeanor that you're exposing that maybe a parent should say, wow, that is a red flag, I've got to react now?
Yes, there are several. I mean, there are many, many signs, and of course, some people present different ones than others. But for the main signs of depression, I do have a pretty complete symptom list on my website. But for the main signs, I would say, like for me, I couldn't sleep. I would say I find that in pretty much maybe 95% of the people I talk to is they can't sleep. And I learned not too long ago that one of the main causes of that is that when you're depressed, your chemicals in your brain, they react, they're off balance, they get out of balance. And so that chemical imbalance affects your circadian rhythm. So this isn't just all in your mind. This is your body almost like fighting your mind. So this mental illness doesn't affect just your mind, but your body as well. So I would say not being able to sleep, that's a huge sign. Always feeling tired. I know for most people, teens, it's pretty normal for us to feel tired all the time, to not want to do anything. We're pretty lazy. And it's part of growing up, it's part of being a teen. Mm-hmm. But I would say when it becomes constant, when all of a sudden you notice that this leads to other things, like, oh, I'm feeling super lazy, I'm feeling super tired, so I'm going to play video games all day. Well, playing video games can be a source of self-medication. And then so it's looking for things like that. And also isolation is another very big sign. And also self-medicating different ways. People self-medicate in all sorts of ways: drugs, alcohol, sex, porn, video games, internet usage, TV, music, especially music. And what ways I self-medicated was through reading. I would read all the time alone in my room, isolating myself and trying to get out of my world and dive into the world of the book, because I didn't want to live in this world anymore.
But Luke, let me just share something. As a parent, if I had a child who was reading all the time, I would be saying, I would be saying to other parents, look, my child is brilliant. He's reading all the time. You see what I mean? As a parent, we don't see it through that lens. That's very interesting. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted to jump in on that.
That's a very good point, because exactly that's what my parents said. Great, he's reading all the time. That's awesome. It's so great. Because I wasn't a very outspoken kid. I was very quiet. I didn't make lots of trouble. But that can also be another sign, is lots of anger, lots of resentment. And again, that's kind of normal for teens. We're trying to figure out who we are. Our parents really annoy us, and that's part of growing up. But also anger is another big sign. Eating disorders very often lead to depression. Whether if you notice that your kid is all of a sudden not eating anymore, or eating very less, or they're overeating, they're binging. So that can lead to different eating disorders, and that can be very, very dangerous. And eating disorders, just as a side note, affect guys just as well as girls. It's not just a girl problem. Guys suffer from this as well, and I'll be writing a little bit about it soon, about how guys are affected by eating disorders. So if I think those are some of the main signs, not being focused in general, just really not having a drive, not being focused, not wanting to do anything, just kind of living in, there's so many analogies people make for depression, and they all fall short because they don't really add up to what this really is. But the best analogy I can think of is just being in a pitch black room. You can't see anything, and you're looking for a little needle. You're looking for a needle, and that needle is hope. And you can't find it, and you're searching everywhere. You're crawling on your hands and knees, and eventually just give up because you just can't find it anymore. You just don't see the point of going on with your life anymore.
Wow.
So that's the best way I could sum up depression.
Well, very good. Luke, hang on. Luke Maxwell is our guest. He survived a very, very horrific suicide attempt driving his family's van 60 miles an hour head-on into another vehicle. Thanks be to God, both drivers were relatively uninjured and now actually involved together in the same work of spreading a message of hope for teens in depression and with suicidal thoughts. We're going to take a short break right now. Nancy and Cheryl and the others, thank you for your patience. Thank you so much. We're going to get to your calls on the other side of this break. Others, if you can relate to anything Luke Maxwell has shared and you want a word of hope for yourself or someone that you know, do call us, please. It's an important broadcast. 1-800-585-9396.
EWTN is now on Twitter. Get short, timely messages from EWTN on your computer or cell phone. It's easy to stay up to date on a wide variety of topics. pro-life news, Vatican announcements, catechesis, apologetics, the latest EWTN programming, and more. You can link to EWTN on Twitter from our homepage or go to twitter.com/EWTN. At work, at home, at school, and on the road. Stay connected to your world with EWTN's Twitter page.
60 Seconds with Father Mitch Pacwa.
This communion with Jesus and with one another, that being united to Him and abiding in Him, that is the indispensable condition for bearing fruit. That's why our Lord says, back in John 15, verse 5, apart from me, you can do nothing. If you're not united to Christ, you're not going to do anything for Him. So communion with Jesus, our Savior, focusing on Him and getting to know Him and be known by Him, that is what makes it possible for us to bear fruit as Christians. And communion with others is the most magnificent fruit that the branches can give. That's one of the things that He's looking for from us, that we have a communion with one another, that we have a love and a concern. Does it mean we agree with one another? Not necessarily.
The people you know and trust are on EWTN.
This is Patrick Coffin. Join me for Catholic Answers Live. It's 2 hours dedicated to Catholic apologetics and evangelization. Designed for Catholics and non-Catholics alike, it's your opportunity to hear from and talk with some of the leading apologists and theologians in the church today. You've got questions? We've got Catholic answers. Catholic Answers Live, weekdays 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
Thank you so much for listening to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Our guest is Luke Maxwell. His website, youcan'tbeerased.com. It's the letter U, can't, the letter B, erased.com. And a lot of resources on there. Some of the things he's mentioned here on the radio show are there. He can be contacted for speaking engagements. Just a remarkable story and really a remarkable young man that God has brought through this very trying time and certainly very difficult for his family as well. But we're going to get back to your calls here because this is your show, folks. We want to hear from you. So Nancy in Michigan, thank you for listening and thank you for being patient on Sirius XM 130. Hi, Nancy. You're on the air. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Doing better now that you called. Thanks for getting a hold of us.
Okay, well, I was just calling. I was a youth minister for a number of years, and parents would come and talk to me about this issue, of course. And the one thing I ended up sharing was just a personal experience that I had because I really couldn't give them advice on the, medical side. But one Saturday morning, I was praying the rosary, and I really just had this very, very strong desire in my heart to get this rosary finished, and I kept getting interrupted by my kids and they wanted to go shopping, and I said, listen, I got to pray this rosary. We're not going anywhere until I get this finished. And so I went back to praying, and the Blessed Mother came to me, and I didn't see her or anything, but she was in my chest in a very profound way, and she said, Nancy, I want you to consecrate James to my Immaculate Heart today and every day until he chooses to do it himself. And I was like, like this had ever happened to me before, and I didn't really know what she meant. She didn't tell me how to do it or anything like that. And then she went on to say, promise me. I said, okay, I promise you. She's like, promise me. I said, all right, Mary, I promise you. Promise me. 6 times she said, promise me. And so each night, all I would do was just kneel down at my bed and just say, Mary, I consecrate James to your Immaculate Heart. And I didn't know what it was about or anything, but she did. Because about a week later, she saved his life in it's a much longer story, but in a very dramatic fashion. And so, I just tell parents that there's a spiritual aspect of this. We know that we're in a spiritual battle with the enemy. And so I talk to parents about consecrating their children to Mary's Immaculate Heart every day and really say, are you praying for them? Are you praying the rosary? And in Luke's story, it sounds like he had parents that were really praying for him. So I'd just like to share that.
Thank you for sharing your story. God works in such mysterious ways, and I know He's affected all of our lives, even if we don't realize it. But yes, the Blessed Mother has been very important especially in my healing and in my, I don't know what you would say, my salvation in both my life, my soul, and my body, and that I doubt I'd be alive right now if it weren't for her. In fact, the night before I attempted suicide, my mom came into my room while I was sleeping, and for some reason, she didn't know why, but she doused me head to toe all around my bed in Lord's water. And the next day, I made my attempt. And you might say, whoa, that didn't do any good, right? But I survived, and I should, in a place I shouldn't have survived. So yes, I definitely agree with you that that Marion, there's so many resources for us to overcome both spiritual, mental, physical, to overcome all of our struggles. So thank you so much for sharing with us.
Yeah, I think, Nancy, that is a great reminder for all of us to constantly pray for our children and consecrate our children to the Immaculate Heart, the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And like you said, Luke, that your mom dousing you in Lord's water, I mean, the more we can arm our children with, all of the graces that are given to us through our prayers and through our sacraments. I mean, that can only help our children and help our teens. But Luke, let me ask you this. Go back to that point though. The next day, there had to have been. Was it just like a switch that went off in you that you just knew this was the day you were going to attempt it, or what? If you're okay talking about it, is it? I mean, what exactly maybe was going on inside of you that said, okay, this is it? Because I'm always interested in what takes a person to that really deep point of desperation where they say, okay, this is it.
Right, and that's a very good question, because many people wonder that. Sometimes, for some people, there's a trigger. Something happens at the breaking point. It's just too much now. For me, I don't remember a specific trigger. All I remember is that I woke up. I'm just like, okay, this is it. This is today. I'm going to do it. But the thing is, I've done that many times in the past, where I said, okay, this is it. This is the day. I'm going to do it. But I never did. So with this day, I think what happened was I had a chance. My chore that day was clean out our 12-seater van. And then so I asked my mom for the keys so I could listen to the radio, and that's when I had my chance. I had a motive. I had the accessibility. And so that's why I believe that I did it that day, was because that's the first time I actually had a chance.
Luke Maxwell with us, sharing very candidly about his suicide attempt 3 years ago in December. We're going to go back to your phone calls right now at 1-800-585-9396. Cheryl is calling from Eastern Oregon. Cheryl, thank you for calling. Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, and you are on now with Luke Maxwell. Hi, Cheryl. How are you?
Hi. Thank you very much for taking my call. Sure. I have a 17-year-old daughter that seems to be struggling with depression, and I'm having a very difficult time helping her recognize what she's going through. She's very reluctant to talk about it. I've arranged for her to meet with a counselor if she needs to. We've been encouraging her to take physical care of herself, try to get adequate rest. We've tried some homeopathic remedies, but she's really still struggling. She's a vibrant girl, high energy, but she has trouble sleeping. She has a lot of the classical signs. She's cryy. And so I'm looking for some help with maybe having maybe an outside suggestion from someone who also apparently was very reluctant to talk about or share feelings. And as a parent, I'm pretty dialed into the depression because she's going to be genetically predisposed to it, and we've got a very strong family life, but she's a senior in high school. She's going through a lot of pressure with schooling and so on, and feels the need to really perform, and so she's got herself under a lot of pressure. So I'm looking for a way to try to reach her, to help her understand and not feel embarrassed or shamed by that she is actually maybe going to need to get some help.
Thank you for your call. I mean, I'm sorry that your daughter's going through this, Cheryl. I mean, I hear this so many times is that parents say, well, my teen doesn't want to get help, and they're trying to help them, and all I can think of is if I could talk to them, if they could look at my experience and see how much they could improve, how they could get better. So one of the main things that I would suggest is, first of all, what has worked for parents in the past that I've talked to is simply sharing my story with their kid. So I have a 3-minute video of my story on my website, and it's on my YouTube channel as well. And so that's a short way of showing that this is what I went through. This is what I was like. This is what I went through, this darkness, and this is how I got out. And there's hope out there. And so sometimes that works. Sometimes the kid will go, oh, wow, someone else actually understands what I'm going through. They can see that there is hope out there. They don't have to live like this. This isn't who they are. They can be that vibrant, happy person that they used to be. So that has worked in the past. Also, in regards to getting their kids to counselors, I've heard many parents tell me how they would reward their child at the end. So, okay, well, we'll go to the therapist, and then afterwards, let's go for ice cream, or let's go to that restaurant that you really like. That has worked also for parents. And in general, always, I know you are, I'm not questioning this, but always loving her, always showing her how much you love her. Because when I was depressed, I couldn't see love. I would see things my parents were doing, and I couldn't interpret that as love. So as much as you can to actually physically show love. And I know, I know from experience how much, I don't want my parents to hug me or, just leave me alone, right? But I think that's one of the most powerful things you can do when all else fails, is to show as much love as you possibly can. And to maybe, I don't know exactly what your situation is, but if she has close friends, you can help them be aware so they can help her out too, because I know coming from a peer, a lot of times it's a lot easier to listen and to actually take suggestions. And also, finally, I'm always available to be contacted. I have a contact form on my website, my email. It's simple, just luke@youcan'tbeerased.com. And then I'm always there. I will take emails, and then lots of people PM me or DM me through different social media channels. So that's where I would recommend to start, and then just see what happens. And also, I'd also recommend that you find support for yourself as well, because I know sometimes this can be harder for the parent, because I know you love your kids so much, and you want them to feel good, and you want them to be happy, and you're trying to do everything you can. So sometimes you need some support as well. And sometimes I've had parents go to a therapist instead of their kid, because as hard as they try, they just can't make their kid go successfully to therapy. So they go instead, and then they tell the therapist what's going on, and then they get suggestions from him or her on how to deal with situations that come up. So that's where I recommend to start, because I have seen those different things work in the past. So I hope that's a help.
Luke, let me ask you this. Should Cheryl watch your video first before her daughter watches it, or what would you recommend?
Yes. Yes. Definitely either way works. But, I think if you watch it first, that way you knew what was coming up, and that way you'd be open for discussion afterwards. And always something that made a really big difference in my life and in my recovery was my parents telling me, you can tell me anything you want, anything that's going on. We're not going to punish you. We're not going to get you in much of trouble, because that's what I was afraid of. I know this might seem a bit silly, but I thought if I tell my parents what's going on, I'm going to be grounded for the rest of my life. And that's what I was afraid of. So them letting me know, we're not going to get you in a bunch of trouble. That's not the point. The point is that we want to help you feel better, to help you see hope again, to help you feel love again. And I'm going to do everything I can to help you accomplish that. And so that made a really big difference in my life.
Right. And that's at youcan'tbeerased.com?
Yes.
Okay, Cheryl, does that maybe that brings a little hope that you could check out that video?
Yes, it will. I appreciate that very much.
Okay, and prayer.
And you can contact me anytime as well. If anything else comes up, I'm always there.
And prayers are with you, Cheryl. Know that we're praying.
Yes.
We hold everybody up in prayer, so know that you have a prayer team around you, Cheryl, for your family as well. Okay. So we're going to move right along. We're going to try to get to all the calls today. George in Indiana, listening on Sirius XM 130. George, welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie and our guest, Luke Maxwell. Hi, George.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. I really would like to thank Luke especially, first of all, for what he's doing, because he has no idea how much of a blessing this is to parents to realize that these types of things can be overcome. I have a son that's been going through this for a long time, and what I'm curious of is he mentioned hereditary. I wanted him to elaborate a little bit about hereditary, where he thinks this stems from, and also if he's ever thought that birth defects or birth delivery sometimes can have an effect on this, or why is it that it shows up at puberty? Because at 12, 13 years old, he started doing exactly the same thing.
All right, those are all very good questions. Thank you for your call. Through genetics, I would say, obviously, at the fall of Adam and Eve, everything came into play: physical disease, mental disease, spiritual disease. So I believe this stems all the way back, and actually have proof that from 4th century BC, when a Greek physician named Hippocrates, you might have heard of him, he defined depression as something called melancholia. So this goes all the way back to then. The Greek physicians knew about this disease, this medical illness. So it's been on our genetics for a long time, and some people are more genetically predisposed than others. But I would say genetics are a very big factor in being diagnosed with depression and feeling the symptoms of depression. As for birth defects, I would assume that any kind of defect in the body, any kind of injury to the body, it also affects the mind in various ways. And one of the ways could be depression. Although I personally haven't seen any evidence or anybody talking about how birth defects affect their mental health, though I'd assume there would be people out there, because what affects the body affects the mind, and what affects the mind affects the body, and as well as the soul. So we're all connected in that way. And I forget, what was the last question you had?
And basically, one other thing is, I was curious that we went through everything. This has gone on for a long, long time, and we got on the medication, and I agree with you 100% that they mask it with drugs and alcohol, and they hide it away, and then eventually it's almost like they have to just completely crash, And you have to get rid of the alcohol and the drugs before you can actually diagnose the depression. Is that
right? Because especially with self-medication, you're always wondering, well, which did depression cause the addiction to alcohol, drugs, or did those cause the depression? So by removing those, then we can accurately see what is going on. And as for puberty affecting depression, with all the hormone changing, chemical changing, I think that's one of the main reasons that this can cause a chemical imbalance. But I've also seen middle schoolers, maybe 10 to 12 years old, who are cutting, who are depressed. And I've heard stories of people as young as 6 being affected with serious mental illnesses. So while this mainly comes out during the teenage years, this does affect people before and after, and well into their adult years. Some people have begun feeling depression, even much after their teenage years.
All right, George, thank you for calling Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. We appreciate that very much. We're going to get to, as Debbie said, as many of you as we can. 1-800-585-9396. Teen depression and suicide, our topic, with Luke Maxwell, who, for all intents and purposes, should be in a grave right now rather than sharing a message of hope, especially to teens and their parents regarding depression and suicide and related issues. So if you just tuned in, Luke survived really a nasty suicide attempt by driving the family van head-on into another vehicle at 60 miles an hour 3 years ago in December. And so God obviously has a purpose for you, Luke. We're going to get to Mary in just a moment, but Luke, I don't want this show to end without again letting listeners know that you will travel anywhere, I presume in the world, but certainly around the U.S., right, to speak at conferences and parishes and to youth groups and to anyone who will listen, right?
Yes, I will travel anywhere. Anywhere there are people, I will travel and I will speak, because that's my drive. That's my goal, is to be unashamed about this and to help anybody else who is suffering.
Well, you have a great purpose, Luke, and a great ministry, and you're helping thousands and thousands right now, and you're teaching all of us. And so thank you for that. Thank you for putting yourself out there and sharing your story from a deep real deep heart way. And that's important for all of us as parents, because we need to understand this. And we've grown up and we've, made it through our teenage years. And so for us to have to be a parent or grandparent, we have to really put ourselves in the minds and the hearts of our teens. And you're helping us do that today. So we're going to move right along to Mary calling in. Mary, thank you so much for waiting patiently, and welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie and our special guest, Luke Maxwell. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Mary.
I wanted to say that in response to Cheryl's comment, I needed a lot of help when I was depressed a year ago, and my parents sent me to a facility, and at first I was angry and I was mad and I hated everyone, but I realized I was there for 5 days, and I realized that I really needed the help. And before that, I was very reluctant to say, oh, I'm depressed. I kind of just denied it. But if you just tell someone that you love them, I guess that's the biggest thing for me, was I needed someone to just tell me that they love me. And so that is a major factor in helping someone who's depressed.
Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you for sharing with us. And yes, I agree. Telling people you love them is so important. Telling people that you'll be there for them, you'll be behind them, no matter what they do, no matter what they say to you, you're going to be right there to support them. I know that made such a big difference in my life, and I'm so glad that you're feeling better, that you took action, and now you're doing better because of that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary, for your phone call, and it sounds like things have gone better for you, and we're grateful to God for that. 1-800-585-9396. Really not a lot of time left to get to calls here on the program. But, Luke, in our last, few minutes with you here on the program, we got about 3 minutes left. What was the family environment like for you? When you came out of this, you were okay, thanks be to God. I have to believe, I know your family, but any family really would rally around someone such as yourself. So what did you experience from within your family after you had the suicide attempt?
Oh, it was, first coming into that house, I was scared. It was kind of awkward, right? Of course, none of us knew how to handle this. This had never happened before. But all my family showed me was love. They did everything they could to help me get better. My siblings, my parents. And eventually, as my friends found out about what happened, they did nothing but try to help me overcome this, try to help me be the person I'm meant to be. Mm-hmm. And so it was amazing. I think that's another thing that made a huge difference, was that I thought everyone would be angry. I thought everyone would try to reject me because now, I'm weird. I'm mentally ill, right? What I didn't realize is that lots of people I know are mentally ill. It doesn't mean that they're crazy. It just means that their mind got sick and now they need help because of it. So realizing that, seeing that love, that it was was an amazing experience. I think that was another huge factor in my healing.
Right, right. Well, Luke, you have to be really strong. Like, I want to just go back to Mary for a moment because she's such a strong young lady. She realized, she fought against the help. She got help, and she's getting healing now. I mean, you kids are strong. I can say you kids because I'm a lot older than you guys, but you kids are strong. You have that, and that's what we have to tap into as parents and grandparents is the strength that's inside of you guys. You guys are very, you have the tools to thrive in this world. We have to stay in touch and stay in contact and stay tapped into you guys. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, each teenager I meet, and I've talked to quite a bit, I mean, I can see their uniqueness. I can see their strength, their skills. And then that's just part of my drive is I could see that in them. And that's why I want to unlock that potential. I want to unlock those skills, those desires, those dreams that they just can't feel right now.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, each person is so unique. They all have their own strengths. And then that's just one reason I love what I do is that even though it's not always easy, it's not always a happy experience, but just the results we've seen have been quite amazing.
Well, it's just like going back to Mary. I mean, when she called, she's a young person and she's beautifully strong and just a beautiful gal. You can hear it in her voice. I wanted to reach through the airwaves and give her a big hug.
Right.
I mean, you guys are awesome. You are our future. You are you are everything to us. I mean, all of us, we've kind of lived our life. We're all kind of, most of us are on borrowed time now because we're getting older.
Careful, Debbie.
Okay.
Careful.
Yeah, but you guys are our future, and this is important work you're doing, Luke, and I will pray that it continues to spread and others can join your ministry and help to really empower our youth.
Great, thanks. Yeah, it's been an amazing journey, and it hasn't been easy. But I just look back and think, wow, if I survive this, then all of you other people who are suffering from depression or any illness, I mean, whether it be physical, mental, spiritual, you can survive this. I mean, I know from experience how hard it is, but I also know from experience the joy and the hope and the love you receive when all of a sudden you're overcoming this.
Wow, Luke Maxwell, thanks for being with us on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. We will have you back, God willing, at some point. Folks, go to youcan'tbeerased.com. The letter U, the word can't, the letter B, erased.com. And please bring Luke out to your area to speak. Email him. He'll keep anyone you want in his prayers. God bless.